amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHousebg.com. Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com. that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution.
Watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brandon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
You're making a good point. If you could get a union, which I think will happen pretty quickly, if you think about just the EU, Britain, Switzerland, Canada, and Mexico, that's about 72% of all the trade with the U.S. So if you get that resolved, it works. The one thing I would say that I've noticed as I do business all around the world, in the Middle East and in Europe, 50% of the people in the world have Trump derangement syndrome. And they still have a really hard time understanding why he's back in the White House. And I say to them, listen, it doesn't matter. He's in the White House. We have to deal with the policy, not Trump, the policy. Let's forget about the fact that he's in the White House. There's nothing you can do about it. He was elected with a majority. Let's get over the derangement syndrome. Let's focus on the policy and get stuff done. Because I've got to tell you, there's a lot of people that go out of their minds just the fact that he's back in there. And I realize it. It is what it is, but I've got to deal with it too. I mean, I just have to deal with policy. And I think you're right. If he gets this policy right and circles the wagons with the Europeans, the Mexicans and the Canadians, that's a more powerful charge against China. I totally agree with you there.
Is Trump derangement syndrome a real and dangerous mental illness? Welcome to Truth Thursday on the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. Well, according to the Daily Mail, Minnesota Republicans are seeking to legitimize the pejorative term used to describe the left's disdain for President Trump with a bill in the state legislature, and it's going to legally define it as a mental illness. That's true. They really are. And they go on to say even more. Let me quote this. While mental health experts have pointed to harm of misusing medical and psychiatric terminology to pathologize political opposition, they argue that the term captures a kernel of truth, close quote. Well, I believe this is a serious issue, even though I like to make fun of them. And it could easily lead and is leading to political violence. Yes, domestic terrorism by these people on their fellow
kernel of truth. Close quote.
My
well, I
guest
believe
today
this is a serious
to discuss
issue,
TDS
even though I like to make fun of them.
More
and it
is
could
Dr.
easily
Carol
lead
Lieberman.
and is leading
a
to political violence. Yes, domestic terrorism
and
by these people on their fellow
as America's psychiatrist. She's a 3-time Emmy-honored TV personality and internationally recognized expert in the psychological impact of terrorism. Dr. Lieberman has been a consultant in many high-profile cases, including the Jenny Jones murder case, Evander Holyfield, and the Gabby Petito civil case that did not go to trial, by the way. She's frequently seen on Fox News, Newsmax, and the Washington Times, analyzing crime, political psychology, and media-fueled mental health crises. Dr. Lieberman, welcome to the Rob Maness Show. And now you've been on Worldview Tube.
Yes.
Psychological impact of terrorism. Dr. Lieberman has been a consultant in many high-profile cases, including the Jenny Jones murder.
O'Leary there has talked about this, and I think the phrase that he uses a lot is it's an irrational reaction to Donald Trump, this TDS phenomenon. Do you agree with that perspective, or is there something deeper?
Well, I actually am in the process of putting the finishing touches on a diagnostic proposal that I'm going to be submitting to the American Psychiatric Association. And I have described mild, moderate, and severe kinds of cases. But my basic definition is Trump derangement syndrome is an irrational, quasi-psychotic hatred of anything Trump, resulting in rage and over-the-top efforts to destroy him and his work. And there's a lot more to it, but that is sort of the basics. That first of all, it's irrational. It's about him. It's not about his policies, like the gentleman was saying before. Mm-hmm. It's an irrational hatred of him, and that makes people go out of their way to try to stop things that he is trying to put forward. Now, of course, again, it depends whether it's a mild case or moderate or severe. But it is we all recognize it. It's a recognizable concept, a recognizable diagnosis. People who have it, we can see that they have it. So it's an entity. So I think that we do need to have it actually acknowledged as a real diagnosis. By that I mean by being included in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just a little nutty in my vernacular from where I come from. So you agree with the Minnesota legislature, then it should be categorized as an official mental illness?
Yes. I plan to provide them with my diagnoses, my definitions, and my criteria for each of the types of TDS. I want to strongly support them. The reason also why it should be in the DSM, which is a book that's written by the American Psychiatric Association every several years to classify mental illnesses. And not just, first of all, it's so that mental health professionals can talk to each other. They have a similar language, but also it's for insurance companies because there are codes connected with each diagnosis. And the insurance companies decide how much they're going to pay to treat these different diagnoses. Now, of course, that in itself is ridiculous because it should not be an insurance company, someone sitting at a desk who decides, oh, well, let's see. It needs to be the person's psychiatrist.
Right.
So, but in any case, this would be a way, in other words, that people with TDS could theoretically get insurance companies to pay for their treatment. The problem is they don't want to get treated, but that's another story.
Yeah, it's a strange phenomenon, I think, for a lot of us because it's this mixture of psychiatric terminology, but it's mixed in with politics. Is that a new phenomenon? I mean, I haven't really experienced this before, and I've been around a while. I voted my first time for Reagan, I think, when I was 18. So at least I've been voting since Reagan, but I haven't. Even he did not generate this level of hatred.
Right. There was a concept like in the Minnesota politicians quoted this, because originally there was a diagnosis or a phenomenon called the Bush derangement syndrome. And that was in 2003. by an American psychiatrist and political columnist, Charles Krauthammer. He used this term, Bush derangement syndrome. Quite frankly, I knew nothing about that when I proposed my Trump derangement syndrome, but okay. But even George Bush, there were people who didn't like George Bush, but it did not rise to the occasion, rise to the extent that the people who have TDS go, with the violence, with the swatting, with the Tesla destruction. It's really much more out of control.
Yeah, one of the strangest things about what you just said, and I didn't know that either, and I've met Krauthammer several times over the years in my political life, and I didn't know that. But George W. Bush has TDS himself, doesn't he?
I guess you could say that now. It's very strange, how these people change. Sometimes it's why is he doing that now? I don't know why Bush is doing that. I guess it's because besides his personal reasons, that but I guess it's because Trump has said that we shouldn't have gotten into such a long war. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be any number of things. But what are the from a psychological perspective and a medical perspective, I guess, what are the triggers and the traits that people should watch out for? Because as we've mentioned, and we'll talk about further into the show, this could be quite dangerous.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, just to give you some examples, let's start off with the mild case. And I have the diagnostic criteria, but I also have examples of people who fit under each of these categories. So for the diagnostic symptoms of a mild case of TDS is reeling at the mention of Trump's name with a need to speak up with criticisms and expletives, yelling or throwing something at the TV when Trump appears, stammering when asked what's not to like about Trump, and an inability to come up with anything that makes reasonable sense. Inability to state what policy is objectionable or why, deflecting instead with statements like, oh, he's just awful. Nothing more than occasional TikTok rants. So this is as much as it goes for the mild case. An example of this would be the ladies of The View. Now, they're Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar. They once had a very relevant, reasonable show, which has turned especially unreasonable with when Trump, when Trump was in office the first time, there was some degree of TDS, but it was not at all like it is today, or like it was during the campaign, and like it's continuing to be today. I mean, that was the thing. I originally thought that that the TDS was primarily for the campaign, like trying to not get him elected. But he's gotten elected, and it's continuing, and it's getting worse because people in all different ways, judges all over are trying to make these rules against him or rules against, there was a judge just recently who let out someone who had thrown Molotov cocktails at a Tesla dealership. And they arrested him. They have all kinds of evidence. They have video, they have DNA, everything. There's no question that he did it. But but instead of keeping him in federal detention, they let him out because he had started gender affirming care. And he was going to school in Massachusetts. And he was arrested in Massachusetts, but he had been home for spring break with his parents. That's where in Missouri, in Missouri, that's where he threw the Molotov cocktails at the Tesla, showroom. But so he was arrested in Massachusetts. So it was a Massachusetts judge who decided that he couldn't stay in detention because he had just started gender affirming care. He has to go back to his parents and be able to continue it. I mean, these kinds of ridiculous things are happening. Clearly, this is because she has TDS. She's doing this against Trump rather than making a sane judicial decision.
Yeah, it seems like there are literally hundreds federal judges these days, and I think this one's down at the state level. What we're talking about here that have lost their minds. They really have lost their minds. I mean, they're defending Trinidad
Yes.
terrorists that and drug traffickers, sex traffickers, child sex traffickers. They're defending them, and that's a really big example to me of mass. It seems to be. Could it be called a mass psychosis level of Trump derangement syndrome?
Well, yeah, yes, it could. I mean, I remember when I was talking about this during his first term, and we were talking about like mass psychosis and all of that. But it has kind of formed, it's like gelled since then, you know. But yes. What was I going to say? Something when you were saying about the terrorists, yes. And yes, I'm very impressed by your of course military history
Thank you.
and also with the terrorism, your sage advice in regard to terrorism, because as you may know, I'm the terrorist therapist as well as America's psychiatrist. I don't know if you saw that in my bio, but I've been helping people with terrorism since 9/11.
That's exactly why I dedicated the last segment to exactly that.
Oh, wow. Okay, we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll
great.
talk deeply about that.
Okay,
We got to
good.
take a commercial break right now. When we
Okay.
come back, I want to get more into the crazy things.
Yes.
Because the new pope's out there. You could see his top tweet if they haven't destroyed the account yet. He's got TDS. There's no doubt about it. I think it's probably a mild case. And we'll see a little clip from a young woman that's doing an absolutely crazy thing to destroy her career when we come back. Right here with Dr. Carol Lieberman on Truth Thursday. TDS, it's dangerous. I agree.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Starting to see the left disconnect from the institutions they swore they would never let go of. Here's a girl rejecting an internship from NASA. So I want to make this clear. She was offered a role at NASA and she turned it down because Trump is in office right now. No one tells you how hard it is to reject an offer letter from your dream internship at NASA because of the current administration. And then it's just her shaking her head because there's not really an argument you can make as to why she's being so retarded. But I mean, there you go. For those who are wondering, the piano song is in the key of F sharp. That's about the only thing useful that came out of that particular one.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday. My guest today is America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carol Lieberman, and the terrorist psychiatrist too. Dr. Lieberman, I had to show that clip there. I came across it in my research for the show because, look, I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a young man and was not able to get there. And this young lady, because of politics, turns down an internship to NASA. That is more than crazy to me.
It is. So it's a good thing she turned it down, or we'd have flying crazy people into space. When you were talking before about giving examples of things like the judges who are trying to keep people in the country who are very dangerous. An example of that is the terrorist who was deported from America to Brazil, and where I'm sure you know this, and where they found that he was planning on attacking the concert of Lady Gaga in Brazil that had a gazillion people there. And if he hadn't been deported, what do you think he would have done here?
Oh, exactly. Exactly. It gets me to the Pope, this new Pope, Pope Leo the 14th. And look, I'm not Catholic, but the Pope is really a representative of Christians, the Christian faith around the world, beyond Catholicism, in my opinion. And the very top tweet on his X account is complaining about Trump and President Bukele. And that, of course, that's where Maryland man was sent. That the one job, what is it, Boasberg, is trying to say that Trump has to bring him back to the United States, and these TDA guys, they've been declared terrorists officially by the United States now, but the TDA out of Venezuela is the worst of the worst of gangs in the first place, and it's just crazy that what these people are doing.
Yes, absolutely. But that's probably why the Pope got chosen. He wasn't one of the two top contenders, what I've been reading anyway. But I guess he put that tweet up, and that did it for him. They figured, okay, great, he hates Trump. He's the guy.
Yeah. It really doesn't make any sense. Again, these people with TDS syndrome, that seems to be the biggest indicators. They take actions in their lives that are nonsensical simply because there's a guy named Trump that's in the Oval Office now, and they don't take into regard really the policies. When you read some of the judges' writings on the opinions and everything, they disregard the law.
Yeah.
And the administration is following, it's their job to follow the law and execute the laws faithfully, to take a line out of the president's oath of office. And the judges are doing the exact opposite. I'm just so used to the judicial branch being they're the keepers of the keys of constitutionalism and following the law and not getting crosswise with the law. So it's very puzzling. Very
the voice
puzzling.
of reason. They're supposed to be the voice of reason, and
Right.
if we can't, some of our main bodies, organizations, institutions, have lost their reason. The American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, the American Medical Association, three bodies who, in a sense, are in charge of we're in charge of our own health, but I mean, who make recommendations, are supposed to help us with these health issues. And they have become so woke in the last few years, with the American Medical Association, and medical schools, questioning the idea whether children are born, definitely boys and girls. They're changing it to assigned sex at birth. The American Psychiatric Association, they have a publishing arm, and one of the books that they published recently was basically in favor of, or suggesting how guidelines for in favor of transgender, in favor of gender affirmation treatment. And which is, if the American Psychiatric Association and the American Psychological Association is going along with this, but if these associations, believe that this is good, how are they supposed to be guiding people in a sensible way? It makes no sense. It is not good. It's child abuse. And so these kinds of things, in other words, in so many areas of our world, at least in America, well, I guess it's also in Italy now with the Pope. So many people who, we're supposed to be the guardians in a way of common sense, and to help keep things on the straight and narrow and logical and all that. If these people have lost it, we are all in deep trouble. So,
Yeah.
so
I was going to ask you, is this wokeism where we're denying scientific facts now, and that crowd has been trying for years now to get written into law that I have to use a pronoun set
I,
that some man that's pretending to be a woman demands that I use, or I'm breaking the law. Is that a indicator that that this is much wider and broader and deeper than just Donald Trump syndrome? I mean, it all kind of came about at the end of his first
uh-huh.
administration, as far as like the real effort to push this stuff into law, or is it an outgrowth of TDS from the first administration?
Well, I mean, certainly Trump doesn't believe in wokeism. Um,
Right.
but you mean like a reaction to it, an
Yeah.
anti-Trump reaction? Possibly, although I think some of it started before then, but I mean, like during his administration. I mean, in some ways it's separate, but when there's fanaticism, that all bets are off. Like all sanity is over. Anything can be possible. I did my psychiatry residency at NYU Bellevue. And Bellevue was the best place in the world to do psychiatry because you saw everything, including in the Bellevue emergency room. That was the most exciting place.
Hmm.
And cops would bring people who they found in the street into the Bellevue emergency room because they knew we would take them, whereas some of the other hospitals they were too sick for
Hmm.
Columbia Presbyterian. They didn't
Right.
want to deal with them. Um, so so if someone would have come into the Bellevue emergency room, if a man would have come into the emergency room and said that he was a woman, it would have been, it's just like people who did come in at the time, saying that they were Napoleon or some other figure. Um, that's a psychosis that they would be admitted to the hospital without any
Hmm.
question. I mean, they would have other symptoms too, but like just the idea that they were firm, that's a delusion. When you're a firm fixed belief, that's a delusion. And so nowadays, it's not considered a delusion. It's considered, we're the ones who have to abide by it. It's considered, I don't know what, just freedom to be whatever you want and to play in whatever teams. And if it's a women's, uh, you know, uh, I don't know what to say, like teams, if it's like a championship for
Right.
women, men can play in it too because they said so. So all of these things are, and so in a way, the craziness is the same. The delusions are the same. Like the delusions about Trump are the same.
Hmm.
For example, at the end of his campaign, when Democrats were saying that Trump was Hitler, so and people started believing. I mean, this is sort of
Hmm.
really made Trump derangement syndrome grow exponentially during the campaign, when the Democrats really, had TDS to the nth degree, but they were telling us, these things about him, and a lot of people. That's why it's worse now. That's one of the reasons why it's worse now, because there's been all this media and all this repeated. It's brainwashing, repeated things again and again, about Trump, and people believe it now. I don't know. I'd either like to talk to you about the moderate and the severe, or we can also talk about who is most likely to have Trump derangement syndrome.
Well, you mentioned the media, and I was going to ask you. It's on my list.
Yeah.
Is is the media? You've been on Fox and Newsmax and all kinds of media outlets and everything. Do you think the media coverage of this exacerbates it or helps mitigate it?
The media coverage of Trump derangement syndrome.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Um, well, I think for the most part, it mitigates. Again, it depends how it's shown. I mean, I remember one time, for example, when I was talking about this and they showed the Easter bunny leading Biden by
Mhm.
the hand, um and this was, I guess, when comparing him to Trump, and so things like that, depending upon how it's presented, I think for the most part it's a good thing. because it helps some people to recognize that they have it. This is going to be my next, after I get it into the DSM, or at least after I propose it to the APA. I also want to do something where people can look at the symptoms and see which ones they have and where they fit. And, maybe there's some people who don't realize how deranged they are. Well, at least wake up. Hello, this is not okay. This is, honesty or recognition is the first part of getting help.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm sure you've noticed I chuckle a lot in this. I think it's part of my defense mechanism from it, because it's so crazy to me to see people actually acting out on this. I mean, in the first Trump administration, you had people threatening, like actors and stuff like that, threatening to leave the country, but they didn't. Well, this time they
Yes,
actually are leaving the country, and
yes,
Rosie O'Donnell's one.
yes.
One of
And
Donald
Ellen
Trump's
DeGeneres.
favorites, and
And Ellen
DeGeneres.
DeGeneres.
Yeah, Ellen
Yeah.
was complaining yesterday on television that where she's at is not as good as the United States. Well, maybe you should think twice about leaving your country when you
Yes.
don't know how good you have it. Well, when we come back, I want to talk about what you wanted to talk about just a second ago, and we'll see a clip from somebody that I think is deranged. I want to get your take on it, and we can continue this discussion
Okay.
because these extreme emotional and political combination of things can be very dangerous, and that's what's happening with these Tesla attacks and attacks on people. And we just saw the pro-Palestinian people last night attack Columbia University and students there. So we'll be right back with Dr. Carol Lieberman, America's psychiatrist, and PDS is real, folks. It really is.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
I just went and did early voting, and I had this unexpected emotional reaction. It was just really powerful and reminded me how lucky we are to live in this country where we have this right. And there was a first-time voter there, young kid, and everybody clapped, and it was very meaningful. And for me, to be able to vote for a woman of color was just pretty profound. So I hope that everybody votes. I know this is a very difficult time for our country, and I'm not a political page, but I am a human being, and I do care about my fellow human beings. And I hope that as a country we can get back on track. Really praying for a positive outcome.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and we're talking Trump derangement syndrome and the things that are connected with it. And the most devastating thing that potentially is connected with it is you have these extreme emotional responses that are not far away from leading to violence. And my guest today is Dr. Carol Lieberman, known as America's psychiatrist. You've seen her on the air on Fox and Newsmax many times. And Carol, that little clip there, if I had not been through what we've been through since Donald Trump came down the escalator in 2015 and hadn't seen the whole wokeism and actual judges and law enforcement people trying to force Americans to do things or to say things against their religious beliefs, seeing the violence that we've seen in 2020 and beyond, and now this with the Tesla stuff and other acts of violence we're seeing from a political perspective. I would just have passed by that little video clip. But she obviously, she didn't say Kamala Harris's name, but she's a Kamala Harris voter, which means she's a lefty. And when you look closer at that, at least when I did, I started noticing this woman really has bought into the entire propaganda narrative of Trump as Hitler.
Yes, absolutely. And she was, she was authentically upset. Like you could tell that she really upset. Never has going to the voting booth been so debilitating. But, so that leads actually into what I was going to talk about in regard to who is more susceptible to Trump derangement syndrome. And so we'll start with the women the men are more susceptible because not all men with low self-esteem, because they look at Trump and they see him as an alpha male. He is sort of, what every little boy is supposed to grow up to be, in a sense. He's smart. He has a beautiful wife. He has a lot of money. Now he has a lot of power. He has a lot of power again. The president. I mean, it's like the epitome, in a sense, of being a successful male. So men who have low self-esteem, who compare themselves to Trump and feel intimidated and feel like they are less than, they don't like him. And they find all these things to criticize about him. Not the policies, but his personality. Now, for women, like that woman we just saw, the first set of women who we could look at who didn't like Trump were the pussy hats. Do you remember the pussy hats?
Oh, yeah.
How could we ever forget? How could we forget the pussy hats? And they were super ultra feminist women who were concerned or sure that Trump doesn't like women. And so they started the whole thing. But then since then, in this current campaign and election, there are women who have decided that are against him, and they went along with the idea. Was like the 4Bs. There was this South Korea 4B movement, and it was against women followed the 4 no's: no sex, no dating, no marriage, and no children. And so some women have during the campaign, or even after, when he got, some of them just started when he got elected, because I guess they didn't think for sure he was going to get elected. They stopped they broke up with their guys if their guys were Republican, first of all, or like Trump. And they no sex, no babies, all of that. And so and they think that they are doing this for all women, to stand up for all women. Yeah. So, obviously that's kind of ridiculous, but they have convinced themselves. There's even a thing on TikTok where they were recommending, this person on TikTok was recommending that women poison their men if the men like Trump.
Wow.
Yes. So yes, it is very dangerous. That's another thing. It's not like it was more something to sort of laugh about in his first term, but it's no longer anything. I mean, it's ridiculous, so we laugh, but it's not really, in real life, it's very serious, and it's not abating.
Yeah, I was gonna, since you brought up the women, I saw some polling over the last 3 or 4 weeks out of Rasmussen reports. They're pretty reliable. That showed that amongst the demographics, the age demographics and the race and gender demographics, that there is one group that really hates Trump the most, and it's white, college-educated women. They are like 27 points or so more negative on Trump than the closest negative ratings of any other group, and it's the women in the 40 to 65 plus range. So it's older, a little bit older women that are the most that are college educated that are the most opposed to Donald Trump. Is there some kind of baseline with that you know about that would drive that?
Well, the thing that would particularly drive it is the fact that they are college educated, because colleges are turning out more um, anti, I mean, not just anti-Trump, but like anti-capitalism, and
Hmm.
of course, Trump, symbol of capitalism, even if he wasn't president. Um,
Yeah.
and so they kind of learn that. I mean, it really starts in elementary school. All these political things, it's unfortunate that we've kind of come into this a little too late. I mean, I'm not, I haven't given up hope. I mean, we have to
Right.
try to fix it and turn it around.
Hmm.
But like the things that are being taught, even in grade school, are really making kids you know grow up with really bad thinking about the world. For example, CRT, critical race theory, taught little kids don't have aren't prejudiced in regard to race, or they don't look at the color of a person's skin to determine whether they're going to be the person's friend or not. They
Hmm.
just, they're in the sandbox or they're in the playground, and they make friends or they
Right.
don't. I mean, but it's not based on skin color. And teaching this in elementary school is just growing, forming a group of racist kids. It's all these things. There are all these kinds of things, and also the idea of teaching people that there are oppressors and oppressed, which of
Hmm.
course feeds into the whole college, pro Hamas, pro Palestine movement. Um, so it's we have to start working, and I guess that's I think Trump is trying to address this based on trying to fix the Department of Education.
Right.
But there are some really, the problem really is starting at grade school, which is very sad and very, um, shows how we have to hurry up to fix this situation.
Yeah, I think he is going to eliminate the Department of Education at the federal level, and I believe that's one of the reasons. That's what we voted for. But this indoctrination, even in preschool, public preschools, uh,
Yes,
uh,
yes,
little babies are being indoctrinated about transgenderism, the critical race theory ideas, and no, they don't use critical race theory the term, but they teach them that, hey, if you're a white kid, you're the oppressor, and there's nothing you can do about that. You're inherently racist,
right,
and they teach
right.
the little kids of color that these white kids are the oppressor, and
Yes,
that they're. It's crazy. It's crazy.
and then you wonder why there's more battles on the playground in schools
Hmm.
between white kids and black kids. It's because of what they taught them,
Yeah.
not because of anything really. So yes, so our world is a mess, and they're blaming it all on Trump.
So, do you think
Kind
one of the questions I have on the Republican side of this? What are the psychological issues that are driving the Republican side? Because it's not that I don't, from what I can tell, it's not always about the policy with them. It's definitely about his personality and the man. Uh, uh,
right.
and they even go against policies that I know that some of them like, because I know many of them. Uh, I mean, what is driving that?
Yes. Well, it's really an unconscious jealousy. It's like what I
Mm,
was talking about with men who have low self-esteem. Like, how did he get to be president twice? Who's he? I mean, Trump he is somewhat like a bull in a china shop.
yeah,
He does have that kind of personality, but it's really only because he cares about these things so much.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
that turns some people off, like the fact that he's so self-confident, cocky,
Hmm.
even, you might say. Um, but it's not in a bad way, it's because it's all tied up with what he wants to do for America. And
Yeah.
the thing is, for people who had TDS before he was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania,
Hmm.
okay, but how do you keep on having TDS after this man who almost got killed? He was like,
Hmm.
how many millimeters away from that going into his brain?
Exactly.
And yet he still First of all, he got up and he said, "Fight, fight, fight." So he was really saying, because he couldn't have planned this, he didn't know that was going to happen. What he was really saying was like, if I die, you guys have to keep fighting for democracy.
Exactly.
And so, and then his life is in danger every day. So how do you, in a logical kind of way of looking at this, how do you have a hatred towards him when he is risking his life every single day and the life of his family to be president and to try to fix America?
Because he loves the country. Well, we've got a question over in the live audience. Let's take that before we go to the break. Go ahead. Rob is our host over there. Go ahead.
Colonel, we have Colonel Burton.
Dr. Carroll, could you talk to how, for the psychology of how once a person has been deceived, telling them the truth is something that can actually be dangerous and causes them to lash out?
Could you give me an example? I don't really. It depends.
I think the Trump derangement syndrome, I think it might have really taken off in 2016 when everyone was lied to, everyone being told that Hillary Clinton was going to win. Donald Trump's has no chance whatsoever. I think it was 98 to 2% at the start of the night. And then we saw that thing whole flip because everyone had been lied to and had basically, what is it called? They bought their own propaganda, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that I don't think that it's, I think there's no other choice than to help people see the truth, whether it's TDS or something else. Of course, depending upon the situation, you have to do it gently. In fact, I talk about that as far as treatment for TDS. My treatment recommendations are, if someone has a very mild case of TDS, you could use logic, but that will not work on most people. But for, in general, the treatment is individual psychotherapy, and for couples and family therapy, to try to prevent divorces, and from people with moderate and severe TDS, medication may be in order because there are symptoms associated with it that you would need medications for, like delusions and hysteria, sociopathy, suicidal thoughts, those kinds of things that you might also need medication for. But, I believe, and I've, when I treat patients, I always want to get to the truth. The truth will set you free. No,
Right.
You have to get to the truth, whether it's about, that they were sexually abused as a child and they may have repressed that, but that's affecting them in their current life, or whether it's TDS. You have to get to the truth. But what I was starting to say, but I talk about how, like, for individual psychotherapy, like for men, you would be talking not about, you shouldn't think that Trump is bad, but you'd be talking about their insecurities, trying to help them feel better, get these things for themselves, to accomplish things for themselves, rather than being jealous and envious of Trump. So that kind of thing. So yes, I think we always have to get to the truth, whatever the issue is.
Yeah, I agree. We got to take our last break, Dr. Lieberman. When we come back, let's get into the terrorism thing, and we can talk to you and let you tell folks what to look for as this transition from an emotional situation to a physical action situation of violence, and what we need to look for to see if we can intercept that kind of stuff. We'll be right back with Dr. Carol Lieberman talking about Trump derangement system, how it's real, and how it can be dangerous.
The other night, Donald Trump said these are domestic terrorists. Everybody laughed about it and scoffed at it. That video looks like terrorism to me. I mean, it's obviously an organized, coordinated effort, however people are communicating with each other, to do this to people around the country who chose to buy a Tesla at some point in the past, many of whom I'm sure are Democrats who bought them in the first place, all because their entire political worldview is ruled by their emotions. And that's the American left right now. It is one angry mob after another willing to take things into their own hands, up to and including keying, firebombing, and otherwise vandalizing cars and car dealerships and charging stations. It's outrageous. It is terrorism. People ought to be put in jail and left there for a very long time and be taught a lesson.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and we're talking about Trump derangement syndrome with America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carol Lieberman. And Dr. Lieberman, Scott Jennings there in that clip, he nails it. But one of the things he doesn't talk about, though, is the shootings. People driving Teslas have been being shot at in some parts of the country just because they're driving a Tesla. And that's a little bit bigger step to me than somebody keying your car or going to a Tesla dealership and doing Molotov cocktails even there. But shooting at people just because they're driving a Tesla. What are the signs that we should look for when somebody or a group is going from, hey, I'm just upset with this TDS and that kind of thing, and I'm emotional about it, to where they become extreme and are susceptible to acting out in a violent way?
Well, the moderate cases of TDS are people whose whole life has been overtaken by TDS. In other words, it's interfering with work and family and other relationships and responsibilities. There's a profound inability to distinguish between what one doesn't like about Trump's policies from what one doesn't like about him personally, an inability to calm oneself to prevent lashing out verbally and physically against supporters, engaging in some action to protest against Trump, such as joining marches or writing op-eds, threatening, following, or assaulting people who wear MAGA hats or other MAGA clothing, committing road rage upon seeing a Trump bumper sticker on a vehicle. And some examples of that are the presidents of colleges who would rather stand up for anti-Semitism rather than, when they were talking in Congress, and the three Ivy League presidents just said that they weren't really going to do anything about what's happening on their campus. And then a sort of a physical example of this, of the moderate, is the woman who followed a young man off a subway in New York. You may have seen that story. He was wearing a MAGA hat. And she was calling him racist, and she was trying to get the other people in the subway car to get in on this and sort of go up against him and so on. And she followed him off the subway train and to try to grab his MAGA hat, and she fell face down onto the platform. So that was karma. Now, major case, more of what you're talking about with the more dangerous kinds. These are people who might quit their job or leave their family to work full-time trying to stop Trump. They leave the United States in protest of Trump, like we were talking about, doing something illegal to try to stop Trump, like bribing a judge to stop one of his executive orders, attacking someone's personal Tesla, like we've been talking about, doxing, putting people's personal information online, and doxing is sort of the prelude to swatting. People, supporters of Trump, are getting swatted. In other words, people are calling 911 and saying that some violence is going on at their house, at the Trump supporters' house. And so the police come with their guns out and all of that. It's a very dangerous. It's amazing that so far someone hasn't gotten killed, but it's obviously very dangerous. Fantasizing, last but not least, fantasizing about harming Trump yourself, joining a nefarious group, plotting harm to Trump, or arranging for someone else to harm Trump, despite knowing that the punishment would be grave. So some examples, we've talked about Rosie O'Donnell, Ellen DeGeneres, Bishop Marianne Edgar Boudet she used her opportunity at the national prayer
Oh
service
yeah.
after the inauguration. That was that was just mind-boggling that here she's supposed to be preaching the Bible and peace and all of that, and she used it, all the national attention on her. I was at the inauguration, so we saw that. And I mean, it's just outrageous. Letitia James, of course, has a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. They're not only are they doing these things to Teslas because of Elon Musk, but also JD Vance has been followed in the streets, crowds getting close, even though when he's carrying his daughter. There have been the swatting. Oh, yes, this is what I was talking about before. Women following the MATGA, Make Aqua Tofana Great Again movement. Aqua Tofana is a poison. And they on TikTok, they're telling women to use these poisons to the men who if their man likes Trump. And
Wow.
Assassination attempts and copycat assassination attempts. The teen in Wisconsin who killed his parents so that he could get their life insurance so that he could go spend his time trying to kill Trump. So yes, I mean the severe cases really are putting people's lives in danger.
Yeah, and we've talked about the media impact and social media impact, but what about the government itself? I hearken back to the January 6th coverage and this whole narrative that continues to this day from people in the government, elected people in the government. A congresswoman just said the other day that police officers were killed by Trump supporters on January 6th, which is a lie.
Yes.
An outright lie. No police officers died on January 6th, and it's very sketchy if any of the deaths afterwards could be linked to that, including Officer Sicknick, to be honest with you, who died of a stroke and natural causes, I think the day afterwards. I mean, what about the government impact on this, the unelected government especially?
Yes. I mean, they kept beating the drums of January 6th. I mean, they're still, as you said, they're still beating them, and really, and I don't think enough people know the real story of January 6th. First of all, I watched Trump that morning. He did not tell anybody in his, press, or it wasn't a press conference, in his conference in the park. He didn't tell anybody to go, even to trespass into Congress.
Right.
He certainly didn't tell anybody to kill anybody or so they're blaming it on him. I mean, yes, did people feel strongly about the outrage about what happened? I mean, I felt strongly. And Pence, he just got this award. Do you believe that? I mean, he couldn't have said, yes, we should count the votes again, because I mean, that's like a normal thing to do. But he was looking for his own. He wanted to be president next. And so he was just doing this for himself. Anyhow, I mean, there are so many people who have their own selfish motives involved. They're not looking out for the country; they're looking out for themselves. And this just has to stop. America. The Norman. Yes, Norman. What's the name of the painter? Norman
Lear?
No, the painter, Norman. Oh my goodness. I always talk about it. Anyway, the painter who painted the beautiful scenes of Americans, like in the earlier days when fathers took their
Norman Rockwell.
Norman Rockwell, thank you. When paintings of fathers taking their sons fishing and kids at in the candy store drinking sodas and all that kind of stuff. Now, that was traditional America. It was beautiful America. And I know, like the idea of, can we go back to that or should we go back to that? Yes, I say we should go back to that. And can we? Yes, we can, if we get rid of all the stuff that's come between. Because, people in their hearts, families in their hearts, really want that kind. Kids still want to be with their parents. Kids still want to be doing these fun things. Families eating Thanksgiving dinner. That was another one of his paintings. And it really didn't get much coverage. But Biden took down the Norman Rockwell paintings or painting whatever there was in the White House, and he replaced it with something else. And consciously or unconsciously, I mean, we know, of course, it was Obama who was the president.
Right.
And I think this was probably his, all the bad things were his idea. But it's like he was trying to say, consciously or unconsciously, trying to say or trying to get us, and I think it was consciously, trying to get Americans to forget about those good days, to forget about when everybody loved each other and everybody cared about each other and all of that. And I think that's very sad. I think we do need, now families don't have dinner together. We need to go back to these kinds of happier times.
Yes, we do. When Norman Rockwell was making paintings later in his life, the Black American family had fathers in the household for kids growing up, and that's been totally destroyed. Not because we passed good laws or removed bad laws, but because we passed bad laws, even though we removed bad laws, Carol. Well, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. I know this is going to get a lot of play on this show because people are very interested in it, especially being able to help each other and stop bad behavior, which can lead to violence and is leading to violence, but simply because one guy named Donald Trump is president of the United States and he loves this country. So thank you so much, Carol. We appreciate it. Folks, you can find Dr. Lieberman on X. We've had her X handle up the whole time. And Monday is More Monday. Chad Stewart, a new author with a new series of books, and we're going to be talking about digital soldiers in war, and it's coming. I'll see you then on The Rob Maness Show.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.